You are listening to Live Free with Rebecca Packard. With this podcast, Rebecca will help spiritual entrepreneurs and mompreneurs experience emotional freedom so that they can create calm and balance in all areas of their life. If you're ready to release your emotional baggage, trauma, and that constant feeling of overwhelm, then you are in the right place. Your journey starts now. Here's your host, Rebecca Packard.
Hi, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here participating today in this amazing podcast that we're going to have. We're talking with Esteban Tovar, and he is the host of Evolved Holistic Health podcast, and we're excited to have you here today. I really love what you're doing with your podcast in sharing the different tools and things that are out there to help people come out of the space of anxiety, to find inner peace, to just have that inside of them, right? So I'm so glad that you're here today. Can you share with us a little bit about who you are? What brought you to the space of starting a podcast that's about inner health?
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for having me here. So what brought me to starting a podcast is I just wanted to get some information out there about healing from anxiety and having a bunch of thoughts that just take over your mind and take over your body. It kind of just makes you feel like just insecure and stressed out and just horrible all over. So for me, as a child and growing up, I was very insecure. I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of just, just hard, just like a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. I couldn't even make eye contact with people. And around the age of 24, I guess you could say I had an awakening where I kind of realized that this was something I didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy feeling like this. I didn't enjoy coming out of my home and just not feeling like I just didn't feel like I wanted to get out of my home. I felt very almost like I was in danger of leaving. And for me, staying at home was my safety. But I just did it because I had to, go out and live my life. But that feeling was constant. But around the age of 24, I had an awakening. I came across a book by Eckhart Tolle about presence, and I started to practice that. And I realized that these thoughts that I had in my head weren't, really mine. I didn't have to really associate myself with these thoughts. I could just let them go and let them by. Um, and so over time, I practiced presence for about 2 years, and that was really helpful. But I still felt that feeling of anxiety and stress and just constant ruminating that took over my mind. There was that space, but I still had those feelings and those emotions that were negative and felt just pretty much horrible. Um, so that's when I came across a psychic, a psychic who gave me a reading, and she gave me a reading that pretty much told me a lot about myself and a lot about the stuff that I thought about that I wanted to do. And that kind of led me down the path of finding like energy healing, energy work. It also led me on the path of coming across you and your work, which is emotion code and body code. And so ever since then, I've just been working on finding more peace. And today is where I feel very peaceful compared to like 4 or 5 years ago. So the difference is like night and day.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you bring up all of those things, because if you are listening right now, you're realizing Esteban is not talking about he had to go out and do this all by himself. He was given these little breadcrumbs over and over again. It started with Eckhart Tolle. It started with the book about presence. It started with a simple, slow practice of coming back into yourself and healing that disconnection, recognizing that your programs, your silent vibrational conversation with yourself, the things that the community, society, your family, all of these different things that had imprinted what they told you needed to be, how you needed to show up, who you needed to pretend to be, what you needed to pretend to be, were not creating connection within you, and you started doing these other things that helped you to come back to yourself, that helped you come back to hearing your own true voice, that helped you come back to being in the space of your body, being in the space of your mind, being present in your mind and in your body. And that has helped you to create your own calm. And by no means do I make this a pun, because I say this all the time, but you're your own calm in the middle of all the chaos. You live in a very busy city. You live where there is no night. It is constant evolving energy flowing all of the time. And so for someone like you to be able to say, oh, I found a space where I feel calm, where I feel peace, where I feel present, where I feel like I can breathe that sigh of relief from the overwhelm of anxiety and disconnection, is really amazing. Like, on so many levels. Also, you spoke about talking with a psychic. We love Laura Powers. If you haven't heard her podcast, you want to check that out, Healing Powers with Laura Powers. She's an incredible psychic. And yes, she was who brought you and I together, which is so great, who gave you insights and reassured you about, oh, the things that you're thinking are really things. Like, you can tune into those and really embrace them on all levels, because those are the things that you're going to do. Those are the healings that you're going to undertake. Those are the little piece of candy forward to get you to that next step. And then, yes, working in release, working in the space of release. So it's really great that none of us are here to do this all by ourselves. If we were, there would only be one person on the planet and they would be living it up. Okay, great. But nobody is here to do everything all by themselves. And so I love that you say that, because there's so many times we get into conversation and people will say, oh, I did it all by myself. And nobody does anything all by themselves. I didn't do everything all by myself. You are not doing everything all by yourself. There's nobody out there doing anything all by themselves. If you're running a business, you have a checking account, that's a whole bunch of people at a bank doing stuff for you. You have a website, there's a whole bunch of people behind that mask doing all kinds of stuff for you. But yeah, you're running your own business. Great. We all have these support systems that are showing up to help us. And we need to remember to do that. And this is where the big ticket item is. We need to remember to do that in the space of self-care. We need to remember to do that when we're showing up for ourselves. And so I don't know about you, but growing up, were you really shown how to take care of your own emotional stability? Were you shown how to create your own emotional balance? Was that something that was active in your community or your home or anything like that?
No, I guess growing up, it was more about just, so let's say with high school or grades, it was always about the external. So it's always about, you have to get good grades, you have to do well in school, you have to get a great job. So you have to do all this stuff just to, be successful in life. And so my parents were, I love my parents and they're great parents, but I guess just emotion, the way they grew up they grew up in an environment where they grew up very poor. And so it was more about survival for them. And so emotions came secondary. And once they moved here to, they immigrated from Mexico to here. And here it's a little bit different. We have more, I guess, opportunities, there's a little bit more money here. And so I was able to not worry so much about survival, and I was able to worry about my emotions as well now. And so, no, I wasn't shown how to really care about emotions as much. It wasn't really something that really mattered, you know.
And I only bring that up because 95% of the population is not shown that.
Okay,
so this is not for you. This is for everyone. Recognize I wasn't shown this. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I talk about this repeatedly, that I wasn't shown this. My parents were very much, they didn't come from a different country, but they grew up in a very financially insecure space, and then as adults they came into a space where they were doing much of the same thing, like survival, right? And so we are all coming from, mostly 95% of the population, when they look at statistics, 95% of the population are in that space of surviving, are in that space of, whether you're making $100,000 or you're making $30,000 or you're making $1 million, if you haven't dealt with the emotions, if you haven't dealt with the traumas, if you haven't dealt with the disconnect, if you haven't found your inner peace, you're always going to just be surviving. So that's why I bring that up. It's because you have that twofold of, like, yes, your parents didn't teach you that, and you're a first generation immigrant in this country, and that is another whole level of showing up in the space of emotion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so it's a big difference, especially now in the just being immigrant, first generation American. I guess there's two sides that I have to learn. I have to learn how to be an American, how to keep my roots, and but the so it's great to hear that you said about the that 95% of people aren't showing
Yeah.
emotions. I didn't know it was that big.
It's a huge number, and
I mean,
so
it's great to
often we
hear,
skip over it. Yeah, so
but
often we skip over it because people don't want to talk about that part. That
Mhm.
part's not the pretty part. That part's not the easy part. Emotions are for most people. They're like, just stuff them down and it'll be fine. But
Mhm.
that's the part that keeps us present, right? That's the
Yeah.
part that keeps us here. That's the part that allows us to connect with other people. That's the part that allows us to see each other equal. That's the part that allows us to say, oh, you've been in pain. I've been in pain. I can see you in your pain, and I can hold your hand in that pain, and we can walk forward together, right?
Mhm.
When we ignore the space of our emotions, we don't allow that connection to ever take place. And I'm sure you've seen that over and over again in the work that you've done and the work that you've been doing, and where in time and place, through social program data, unconscious programming, religious programming, and all these other spaces where we pick up this program from the world around us that we don't even realize that we're picking it up, where it's told you, no, 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 don't go there.
Mhm.
Like the great Oz behind the screen, right? Like,
Mhm.
what are some situations where you recognize that those conversations that you were taught so early were actually also part of that pivotal space of where it was feeding your anxiety and not helping you move through your anxiety?
Yeah. So just growing up, everything I had to do was for other people. So don't act a certain way, especially again, my mother being, from, she wanted to assimilate as much as possible, but she also felt like she didn't belong here. So she would always try to present herself in the best way. And in order to do that, she would always judge me. I guess I was an extension of that. So she would always judge me and make me just behave as best as possible so that I don't get in trouble with, Americans or America.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so just from that, I learned to just always pay attention to my surroundings and always pay attention um, if I'm standing out in a certain way, if I'm standing out in a way that's negative or standing out in a way that doesn't really fit with what we should be doing in American society. So so I had to kind of just get rid of all that, and for the most part, that's mostly gone. I still follow social rules, I think most of us do, but for the most, but for the
It's
most,
kind of one of those things. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, you take a bit, you give a bit, you do a little bit of the stuff in between, and take what feels good, leave what doesn't, but like, don't be a dick, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah,
Social rules, don't be a
yeah,
dick.
right. Don't use that not to follow social rules and as an excuse to be a dick.
Right,
Exactly, yeah.
right, exactly.
Mhm. But yeah, just to. just to do it in a way that feels good, and to do things that, even though I might face a little bit of judgment, I'm not hurting anybody, so it's fine. So
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think when you talk about on your podcast, you talk about the different levels of the different healing that you've done. You talk about, I love that you even put it right in the name of your podcast. It's an evolution. People are so programmed, we're going to use the word again, the P word, you guys, to believe that you can do everything in one shot, that you can do everything. One pill fixes all the things. And it's an evolution. We are ever evolving beings. You will not be the same person that you were yesterday, today, nor tomorrow will you be the person you are today. You are an evolving individual. You're literally casting off aspects of you every 24 hours in the space of evolution as we age and grow, and just mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, on all the levels. Every decade we are a different evolution of ourselves. We're from 0 to 10, we change so drastically, and then 10 to 20, and 20 to 30, and 30 to 40, and so on. And if you're blessed to have those years 70 to 80 and 90 to 100, that you are not going to be the same person in each of those decades, and probably into each of the different quarters of those decades. And I think that because it happens so slower as adults, that we think, oh, well, I'll just take one pill, it'll solve all my problems, or I'll just do this one thing and it'll fix everything. And right away, you were like, I read a book, I practiced a practice for years, not for a day, not for a week, not for 66 days, not for 90 days, for 2 years. I stress that because people say, well, I was told I only needed to do a 14-day practice. Well, cool. So you were good for 14 days, then you stopped, and in 30 days, you realized that that 14 days had wore off.
Hmm.
It's like going to the gym. You're going to keep showing up to get better and better. The same thing applies when it comes to these types of things. You're going to the gym over and over again. You're sitting down in meditation over and over again. You're showing up in your practice of release, in your practice of presence, in your practice of self-awareness, right? How long have you been having a daily practice that has supported you in your emotional wherewithal, in your emotional balance?
Okay. Yeah. So when I started with Eckhart Tolle, for me, it was I started with, like, let's say, driving. When he mentioned this in his book, I started with driving. So before I came across the book, I actually had, I was stressed with work. I was stressed with driving. Even like driving, I would constantly
You
have to.
live in the worst state to drive
Yeah.
besides LA.
Yeah.
So the only state that beats you is LA at traffic. Like you guys are like hand in hand. So
Yeah. I heard LA it's pretty bad with
yeah,
traffic. Like it could take a long time to get somewhere that's,
anywhere.
yeah, anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah. So I was driving to work, and I had like these, like, very just stressed out thoughts, like very explosive thoughts. And these thoughts, it just took over me, and I would like speed to work. I would like cut off cars and just speed to work. Very, at the time it's dangerous. It's not really worth it. So just stuff like that at work. I would just snap at people. Um, I was just a very stressed out person. And so with Eckhart Tolle, his book helped me just become more present. And so I started to become aware of the things that I was doing. So I started with driving. I would drive to work, and even if somebody would cut me off or somebody would honk at me, I would just stay present. And so after I stopped driving, I didn't have to be present anymore. And I did that again and again for, I don't know how long, a few months. Then I started with work. So after driving, I would keep that up with work, and I would keep presence there. Once I punched out, I would just, that's it. I didn't have to be present anymore. But over time, after maybe a year and a half, a year, it became kind of just natural. It just happens now.
Yeah.
So now, um, So now, anxiety isn't gone completely. I think part of it is that I'm introverted. I'm also an empath.
Hmm.
So part of that isn't gone, and I don't think, you know, um, so let's say it never goes away. It's fine because I have that practice. So I'll go out and sometimes I might feel anxious and I'll just naturally just happens. Like, okay, I can hear like a truck outside and I can just hear that noise and I can feel the energy in my hands. I can pay attention to just anything that gets me kind of like out of my mind and out of my body. It sounds very subtle, but over time it's really helpful.
Mm.
And the thing about that also is that once you start to just get out of your head, you start to follow intuition more. So,
Yes.
so you start to get thoughts or recognize thoughts in your head that aren't, or I would say from spirits or from the universe that kind of guides you to achieve what you were meant to achieve. So yeah, so once you get rid of all that, I would say junk or garbage, once you get all those things that kind of take over that aren't really helpful, it's part of the ego. Uh, another energy starts to take over, starts to guide you, and that energy becomes stronger and stronger. And over time, it's kind of what leads you and leads your life, and the ego becomes secondary. It's still there for me, but it becomes secondary.
Yeah. Well, it will always be there, right? Because it's
Right.
a constant test, because we're a constant evolution. And so the spaces where you recognize where you up level and you move to a new space and you're like, oh yeah, I've been stress free or anxiety free for
Right.
like 3 months. And
Yeah.
then you put yourself into a new situation where you would have never put yourself. You're like, and you're like, oh, look, I should pat myself on the back, even though
Right.
I'm hyperventilating a little bit. I should be patting myself on the back because I just put myself in a space to put myself to a new level to have a new task. But I love that you say that because you guys, this is a constant evolution. He didn't just wake up one day and go, I am present AF. Like, he was like,
Right.
worked out, I went and I practiced every single day in a bite sized chunk that was reasonable, accessible, and achievable. Okay, let me say that again: reasonable, accessible, and achievable. Because sometimes we go, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all day, right away, and I'm going to do it every day. And that's not going to help because you're going above what you're actually, one, that your habits and your program are going to fight you with that, right?
Mhm.
So taking a bite-sized time, I mean, your commute was probably what, 10, 15 minutes, 20 max?
Well, from New York I went from Queens to Brooklyn.
Oh yeah.
It was about 30, 40.
So it's like, toss the coin. What's it
Right.
going to look like today? It could be 10 minutes, could be 50 minutes. We
Yeah.
don't know.
Never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So taking yourself from a space of, okay, while I'm in my car. I shouldn't be doing anything else, like not texting, not reading, not shaving, not putting on your mascara. None of these things should be done in the car. Just saying, because I've seen it all.
Right.
Um, 15 years of driving an ambulance, I have seen people do some weird things in the car. Um, so you put yourself in a space where you know that you're going to have focused attention. You're going to be able to focus on that one thing for a certain amount of time, and your brain should not be any other place. And you know that you're actively going to be doing that 5 days a week because you're going to commute 5 times. I love it because for so long, when I was commuting and whatnot, I don't anymore, but I had made that like my university time, right? And a lot of people are doing that now, which is so great. Where if you want to start a practice or you want to read a book, or you can put on an Audible or a podcast, or you can start your practice of being aware, of being mindful, of tuning in, of being present, or any of these things. So that's a really great spot that you chose to start this practice because it automatically supported you in what you needed without distraction. And it
Mhm.
also gave you the little things around you of other drivers and whatnot who were going to test your ability to be present, to stay focused. And then you said it took you a little bit, and then you took it to work, and you extended that time from not just your commute, but to the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you found that the more that you practiced that, you just eventually you just fell into that space. And that was because it was a constant evolution of strengthening the muscles. For so long, we are taught to feed the muscles that are not actually serving us and practicing things that are not serving us, like all the things you said at the beginning, right? Like pretend you're not you,
Mm-hmm.
show up in a space that doesn't serve you, focus on all these things that are textbook things that are not real things in a tangible life to try and show up in a tangible life. And the more that you do those, the more you become disconnected. So if you have started a practice like this and you're listening and it hasn't worked out, try again. Whether that means that you set up a schedule, that you have an alarm on your phone that sets you up for 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there. Do what feels good for you for the amount of time that feels good for you, but have it scheduled. Or if you're somebody who commutes, which coin toss these days, a lot of people who used to commute don't commute anymore. We don't really know what everybody's doing anymore in the space of that, because so many people are staying home. But give yourself that allotted time, a focused time. And I think that is pivotal. What do you think in the space of when you decided to evolve and move to the next step? How did you know you were ready to add one more thing? Because I find this happens to a lot of people, and then they revert and they drive themselves crazy, and they're like, but now I'm a failure because I didn't do it. When did you know that moving beyond the one thing and adding one more thing, it was the right time?
Okay. For me, it was, well, like you said, about failure. So let's say you might fail one day. It's not about it's not about actually doing it all the time. So let's see. So I failed, obviously. Like there were some days where I didn't do it. Even now, there are some days where I'm completely not, I'm not interested in being present just because I'm stressed. I don't care about presence at that moment, but I know that I'll come back to it. Like I can be present later, or I can be present tomorrow. It's not, we live in this reality, especially where you have to go to work, you have to commute. You're not always going to be present, and that's okay, because you can come
Because
back
we're
to it.
humaning.
Exactly.
We talked
Humaning,
about this
exactly.
before we even started. We're humaning, and I
Exactly.
love that you say that. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
So the thing is, it, there were some days where I also got bored of being present in my car or being present at work. So I would make it a game, and I would try to be present other places. So like say if it's funny that you mentioned you were in an EMT then.
Yeah. Yeah.
My work isn't as an EMT also.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So you stressed and crazy all the time,
yeah,
right?
right, exactly.
It is what it is. It goes with it's like, here's your bag of crazy,
Right.
and here's your badge.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you have a career.
Yeah, there you go. Got here.
Fine, my friend, be free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say a patient or staff or dispatch would snap at me or would like say something that would trigger me. I would just let it go, just to be present, just to be present, just to see where that would take me. And I would make it a game. Sometimes my partners would say, let's why are you so calm today? What's wrong? What's up?
Right. I love that you said, what's wrong?
Yeah, like
You're calm. What's wrong?
Yeah.
Like, think about that in the way of society. Like, are you working in a business where if you're calm, something's wrong?
Yeah.
That this is a backwards thought, people. Because also you work in a space where essentially you have to be calm.
Mm-hmm.
You should be calm all the time, because that allows you to do the best for everybody around you.
Mm-hmm.
Keep you safe, keep your patients
Right.
safe, keep your truck safe, keep the people around you that might be on scenes safe. So like calmness is like your superhero power.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it's great. It's a great yeah, it's a great skill to have there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so just make a game out of it, I would say. The reason I mentioned the car or at work is that it becomes a habit, and over time when you're there, it just becomes easier to do. So it just becomes easier. But if it doesn't work for you, you could do something else. You know, maybe somebody talks to you a certain way and you just don't react, or you just let it go through you. Maybe one day uh, you wanna say something and you don't, just to be present. Maybe one day you feel insecure or left out, and just feel it, be present. Don't go into that, that that loop.
Right.
Yeah. So just just have fun with it. And so from there, like I said, I started to kind of follow the peace and the happiness and the joy that started to pop up, and that peace and joy started leading me to different places.
Right.
So it led me to like reading books about intuition and reading books about psychic work. It led me to lower powers. It led me to Reiki, energy healing. It led me to you, the emotion code, which helped me a lot, body code, and it helped me to this podcast, to creating a business. So it just leads me to what I want to do. It just kind of leads me, and I'm excited to go there because it's really fun and exciting.
Right. Isn't it crazy how close anxiety and excitement run parallel with each other?
Mm-hmm.
We will be addicted to different things, right? Because that's who we are innately. Our 2,000-year-old programming goes, okay, this feels familiar. Let's do it again. And that's how addiction starts, right? This feels familiar. Do it again. This is soothing. Do it again. This feels good. Even if it feels bad, it's familiar. Let's do it again. And so you were able to, in your practices, teach yourself to become addicted and reprogrammed and redirected towards the happiness,
Right.
towards the feeling good, towards the I feel free, I feel loved, I feel connected, I feel, instead of the I'm overwhelmed, I'm sad, I'm disconnected, I feel ashamed, I feel like ugh on all the levels. So we have to consciously sit down and make that choice at some point. Whether you're doing outside things, whether you lean into outside things, you have to consciously become responsible to say, I see my pattern. I don't like my pattern anymore. I want a new pattern. And I love that you said it. And I didn't try to set you up, but kind of set you up to say I failed, because we all fail. We all fail. Do you know how many times it's been like, okay, I'm going to meditate today. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to lay on the floor. So I'm going to shavasana the
Yeah.
shit out of this, you guys. So I just lay there and like, yeah, cool. But you know what? The internal ego says, you failed, you didn't meditate. But you know what? I didn't fail. I laid on the floor. I had a timeout. I took some breaths and I recentered, and then I moved on. When we look at our failures, more often than not, whether we did or didn't do the practice, often we're not failing. We're just taking a new space on the evolution. Maybe you didn't tune into your presence that day, because if you had, you would have gotten in a car accident and you didn't know about that. But like all these other things are happening behind you. Everything happens for a reason. And on those days where later you go, oh, well, I didn't do yoga this morning and now I feel guilty. You know what? I guarantee you do yoga tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So don't beat yourself up for being human. Don't beat yourself up for not following the clock. Don't beat yourself up for the societal program of, if you don't do it, you're a failure, right? Because that is not going to help you keep moving forward, even though that little bit of guilt can sometimes. You'd be like, I'm not going to miss any days now. Did you ever track your practice? Or you just kind of like went with it?
I tried to do it every day. So I would say, I would say, oh, I got to do it tomorrow. And so I would do it. I never tracked it with my phone. I never tracked it with like a book or anything like that. I just, because I felt
You
like
knew
that
you
was
were
just,
gonna do it, so you knew like this is it. This is how I'm gonna do it, and this is how I'm gonna show up.
yeah. For me,
Perfect.
yeah, it was. I guess I was just so tired of not enjoying my life that I was
Mm-hmm.
willing to just do this.
Yeah.
Just,
All in.
yeah, I was all in. At that time, it was just time for a change for me.
Yeah.
So I was just all in. Yeah, but
See, so I love that you're saying that because, like, you guys, you don't have to have a special notebook. There doesn't need to be a special calendar. You don't need a special watch.
yeah.
No one has to know you're doing it. There doesn't need to be a shout out on social media. Like, you just can decide that you're going to do it and then do it. And you don't have to have external things that become excuses of why you're not doing it. So I love that you say that you just decided, I'm going to do it every day. I know when I'm going to do it because I'm going to be in the car, and that's how I'm going to do it. Not, I have to have the right pen to write in the right journal, to have the right alarm sound on my clock. Like, we humaning so hard sometimes. And we can disconnect from that. It just can be as easy as, I know I'm going to do this every day, and I know I'm going to do this in the morning every day, so I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
So I love that you say that. You said, nope, I just knew it, and so I did it.
Mhm. Yeah, and that led me to well, yeah, to the emotion code, which I actually think I should interview you now for the
Yes. Let's.
led me to talk about how you helped me with the emotion code and what
Yeah.
in your project.
Fantastic.
Hmm.
So if there was one thing that you wanted to just leave everybody with before we tell everyone where they can find you, what is the one thing that you would say in the space of starting a practice, doing a practice, showing up in that space? What's the one thing that you, because I mean, you're an EMT, you're a busy guy.
Hmm.
Like, they're busy people. I've been one. Like, they live in their own little time alternate suck place because of the rotation of shifts and the rotation of trucks and the amount of humans you have to people with. Like, there's no level of sanity happening in the space. So like, like, I see you in all the places. And I love that. But like, how would you, if anyone was going to have an excuse not to start, it would be someone like you,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because of all the different needs, wants, and places you're putting yourself and your energy. So what is the one thing that you recognize that really pushed you to say yes and to do it and to show up, and that other people could easily do on their own?
Um, yeah. So I would say it's yeah, just know that there's something better on the other side. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's something really great and almost magical. Like following your tuition is something that's really magical. A lot of people don't really believe in that, or they kind of maybe know it, a gut instinct that it's there, but they don't really follow it, or they think that maybe logic might work better, when usually it's the gut that works better. And then you can use logic to form a plan, but follow the gut first. So I would say, but yeah, just follow your gut. If you're not happy right now, follow, for me, I was just very stressed. I was very unhappy. I was depressed, and so I just followed. I just wanted to change. I wanted to live a better life. And at the time, I was just ready. I was tired of it. So maybe you might not feel ready now. You might feel ready eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Because sometimes I feel like people might might try to do something and they're just not ready for it, or they're not interested in it, and they'll feel like a failure for stopping or taking a break. But find a way to make yourself interested. Maybe find a belief that will shift the way you shift your energy and shift you, and will make you take action. Because I think that's what drives you, is just the belief that you want what you want and you're going to get it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made,
I love that.
I don't know if that made sense.
It does. It does. And also recognize that what works for you may not work in a month, and you can keep trying. If you try one thing and it doesn't work out, try another thing, right? Try another thing.
Right.
It doesn't have to be one thing is the fix-all thing. Try another thing. If you start a practice and you're like, well, I don't like meditating. Well, then you don't like it. Try something different. Maybe
Right.
something else will work for you. Also, like, we're so glad that you were here. We're so excited for this. This was so much emotion and energy and so much great information for people. Thank you so much for being here. How can people connect with you?
So they can find my website, evolvedholistichealth.com, evolvedholistichealth.com, and then on my podcast, Evolved Holistic Health. And you can just search it on Apple Podcasts, and it'll be there among
Fantastic.
other podcasts.
Yes, awesome. And if you need to, there will be notes following this. So go into the description of the podcast, check out the notes. You'll have direct links right to find Esteban and his website and his podcast, and to connect with him on any social platforms that he might be on. And also, we are so glad that you were here, and thank you for your service. Thank you for showing up in the real world, in like big world, in the space of being an EMT, and also in the space of everything you're doing now to help and support that space. There is a great call for the invisible heroes, I call them, that are showing up each and every day and expressing a great gift of service in the space of EMTs, firefighters, police officers, nurses, doctors. These people show up around the clock, on their birthday, on holidays, at Christmas, on Kwanzaa, on all the things, and they just do it. And so for each and every person who sees them and hears them and shows up for them, and then for each of us who then change and go to that space of, we can support you, we can help you, we have seen you in the space of where anxiety became too much, where PTSD came on, not while you were in the job, but when you decided it was time to be still. So it's such a gift. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for supporting everyone around you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for letting me share this information on your podcast, and for being a great host. And this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And we want to hook you up because you're a loyal podcast listener. So head on over to www.rebeccapackard.com to get a special introductory price when you sign up for an Emotion Code session. Head on over to our website at www.rebeccapackard.com.